Felipe Alfau is a Spanish-born occasional novelist born in Barcelona who emigrated with his family to the United States in 1916 at the age of 14 after, to quote Alfau himself, a life of wandering in the Philippines, the Caribbean and several cities on the Iberian Peninsula. Taking courses in philosophy at Columbia University, Alfau nevertheless described himself as mostly self-educated. Wishing to become an orchestra conductor, his love of music along with his passion for mathematics and physics were what helped him during his writing, the latter becoming quote-unquote evidence of these lifelong passions according to Alfau himself. Making a living as a translator, he initially published a book of children's stories called Stories of Old Spain and a book of verse written in Spanish, but of his two novels, only his Locos, a comedy of gestures, came out around the time of its writing. His other novel, the seemingly equally interesting Chromo, supposedly retaining the same characters, though moved to New York, came out in 1990 when the author was 88. As a translator, Alfau was not happy with the Spanish translation of Cromos, claiming that his message had been deformed, my intentions inverted, and accusing the translator of misunderstanding his sentences. A few years later, in 1983, in an interview with Ilan Stavans, Alfau would remark how bored he was of life, saying he is more than ready to leave this boring, repetitive universe. I swear I can't wait to depart. All while giving his support to monarchy and calling democracy a disgrace, saying Machiavelli was absolutely right. The difference between tyranny and democracy is that in tyranny you need to serve only one master, whereas in a pluralistic society you have to obey many, while also stating his support and trust in the then long-departed Generalissimo Francisco Franco. The saddest part of this interview is where Alfau says the discovery of his work by the critical public came so late, he being in his 90th year and onwards, that he simply didn't care anymore. At the end of that interview, Stevens said of Alfau that he reminded him of Robinson Crusoe of sorts, or a Caspar Hauser, a man isolated from society yet very knowledgeable on the essence of things. Felipe Alfau died in New York, aged 96, in 1999. As for his first novel, fiendishly titled Locos, a comedy of gestures, the story begins with the writer meeting up with a friend at the Café de los Locos, where all the unused characters go, looking for people to populate his stories. Then, almost as soon as he starts writing, one of his characters rebels and diverts the story into a completely different channel. And all throughout we have the same character names recur, but their relationships with each other change all the time, along with their preoccupations. So one moment a man may have a daughter that is called one thing, and then she is called something else. Almost always there is a bejarano involved. Sometimes he is a beggar, at other times an expert on fingerprints. Alfau says in his introduction that such rebellious spirit is shown in these people by a strong desire to become real beings. They often steal into persons I have met and assume the most extraordinary attitudes according to what they think true life is. They assume what in persons is called a pose, and has often ended a promising friendship for me. For them reality is what fiction is to real people. They simply love it and make for it against my almost heroic opposition. Among this neatly organized literary chaos, we find here stories ranging from the comedic, such as the tale of a police prefect robbed of his wallet during a power outage, presumably by his own shrewd nephew, who gets a reward for finding it when he gives it back, or a story where a fervent believer in fingerprints ends up giving himself up for a crime he did not commit, while his faith in fingerprints remains unchallengeable and supreme. But along with these, we have other less comedic and more bizarre narratives, like the story of Doña Micaela Valvedre, who continuously and slowly dies, repeatedly and actually dies, for a period of several weeks, at a time before then slowly coming back to life again. Or the story of Juan Chinelato, crime lord, butterfly charmer, and seller of dead men's clothes. However, never is the writing confusing, and whatever reality the story has assumed at the onset, it will carry on through until the very end without any major shake-ups that would render the plot scatterbrained or impossible to follow. If Alfau were alive today, he probably would most likely care even less for any fame his writings could bring him than he did for in 1993. However, that does not absolve the reading public of their duty to read his work and be baffled like I was, and like you all should be.